Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Start your day tomorrow with The Daily Dog with Michelle Forto, the morning podcast on Dog Works Radio. Apple Podcast reviewer Patty Christensen calls it funny, smart, and filled with all the info I want to know about dogs. I love this show. Wake up with The Daily Dog. Available on Dog Works Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your shows.
Hello and welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Dog Driver Show here on KVRF 89.7 in the Matsu Valley. Be sure to check us out by following us online by searching dogworksradio.com. Today, I am joined by Moe Ladouceur. He's calling in from McDowell, Saskatchewan, Canada. Moe, how's it going?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I am well, thank you. And also calling in is our co-host. His name is Koresh Parto. KP, how's it going?
Doing excellent. This week, we are fortunate to have someone new from Canada with us on our show. Mo has been racing in the Canadian circuit since he was a child, I believe. Mo, give me a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, so I was kind of born into the sport, I guess I could say. I ran dogs because my dad ran dogs and his dad ran dogs, and it just went on for generations. But my dad was the one who started off with the racing with our family. And, my first race I went to, I was 2 weeks old and sat in the car seat on the hood of the truck while my mom helped hook up my dad's team. So I believe my first race was a one-dog race, and I was 26 months old, around that range. So it's something I guess I'll never get out of my blood. Growing up as a child, I participated in one dog, two dog, four dog, six dog, and then even 10 dog once I took the kennel over from my dad. When I was younger, we'd go on the road, me and my dad, and I'd race the 4 dog, 6 dog, and he'd race the 10 dog. And I actually made it to quite a few Arctic Winter Games. 1994, I went as basically a handler because I was too young. 96, I went to, it was actually Chugiak or Eagle River for the Arctic Winter Games. And 98 was the first time I raced there. I won triple gold there. That was in Yellowknife. And then 2000, we went to Nunavut, which was probably one of the coldest places I've ever been. And then 2004, I was lucky enough to have it in my hometown in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And I took a gold there. And then, I grew up in the oil patch. So as life progressed, I got pretty busy with work and whatnot. And some years I raced, some years I didn't. And I was in and out of the sport, but we always had dogs. We did tours. We had a lot of before 9/11 took place, we were very busy with the Japanese market for tourists. So we did quite a bit of that. And in recent years, I've gotten back into dogs. And, well, I guess I've always had dogs, but really focused on what we want to do. In 2016, I raced the PAW World Championships, which was 335-mile heats. And, I was pretty happy just to finish it. Some pretty high-name mushers had said that it had taken them a few times just to finish it, and the conditions that year were pretty tough. So it was a big learning experience to go and do that. Unfortunately, after that year, we had the forest fires in Fort McMurray and had to evac all the dogs and head down to my dad's place out in Westlock, Alberta. So by the time I got back, it was the big rebuild and rebuilt my kennel, and then I ended up hurting my back during the rebuild, and I was out for that year. So last year, I ended up moving out, met the girl of my dreams, I guess you could say, and I moved out to Saskatchewan here, and we've got great training here. We just came up a little short last year training for the PAW, but it broadened our minds on what we can do with our dogs. We've got a great group of dogs we're working with, lots of young stuff coming up. So I guess in years to come, we'll probably race the PAW, and I'd even like to make it up to Alaska again and race in the Rondy, race in the North American race, and Tote, those type of races. And the thing is, if we come up short this year on the PAW for training, I think we'll just pack her up and head north to Alaska, because the distances are a little shorter up there. But I know you boys are fast up there, but ever since I was a kid, my dad always had the North American VHS tapes, and I always watched those, and I always wanted to race North American. So it's something that I'm sure eventually I'll end up there trying and see what we can do.
Mo, you remind me a little bit of Buddy Streeper. When I was talking to Buddy at the races, he always said that when he was a child, they would all sit around the TV and watch the North American or Ferrandi with the whole family, and the sled dog sport was in their blood. They were born and raised sled dog folks, not like me for myself. For example, you're talking about a legacy within your family, your grandfather, your dad, yourself, your girlfriend, all in the sled dog racing circuit. Tell me a little bit about Le Pas. You mentioned a lot of training, a lot of distance that you have to put on the dogs. Can you give me more information?
Well, Le Pas you can be as ready as you think you're going to be, and you're going to get sideswiped with something completely different. Like I had never raced Le Pas, and that year my dad kind of jump-started the kennel because he seen I was down and out. I was an apprentice welder. There wasn't much work. There wasn't much for me to do, and I didn't have many dogs because I had sold out quite a few dogs that I was trying to get out of the sport in years prior to that. And my dad just said, well, who would you get dogs off of? And at that time because when I had sold out, I had gotten away from the hounds. I got sick of putting jackets and booties and ear warmers and everything on. And I said, well, I think we'd go to the Cooks, I said, because they've got that husky line. And like I said, I was tired of putting all the gear on the dogs. So I got in touch with Kevin, and he actually, at first we were going to buy a couple bred females, which turned into buying a 10-dog team from them. So it was pretty interesting to take a totally different group of dogs that I wasn't used to working with. And then I started asking around for advice on running the paw, because the furthest I had ever ran before that was 22 miles in Fort Resolution. So I'd say the worst advice I ever took was taking somebody had said train at 16 miles an hour. And you know what? My team was very steady, but they weren't really open-minded to different conditions. So we trained at 16 miles an hour, and we went to the paw. And I believe the day before the paw, there was like 6 inches of snow that dropped, and it was like +3 or +4 and 3 35-mile heats. Now, if we would have had a nice, fast, good trail, I probably would have been pretty steady, but, I wasn't ready for that. I was used to training at home on a good trail all the time. So, last year we trained a lot tougher. We had probably over 10, 15, 22 milers on, and our dogs were doing really good. And then we put a few 26s, and I wanted to get a 30 on, and we just didn't get that 30 on. And then unfortunately I went to watch the race, and because we were picking up a dog from Eric LaForce, and the trail was mint. Everybody was flying, and I told my dad and I told my girlfriend, I said we probably should have came and raced this, because with the conditions the trail were in. But in the back of my mind, the last time I ran the paw, it was one of the toughest races in my life, and it's funny because day 3 coming across, you come down the slough, finishing that after, 105 miles of racing pretty much. And, I got a little emotional because I always wanted to run the paw, and I knew it was a tough race. And to finish it on that day after a slugfest for 3 days, I was pretty happy. So, like I said, last year we came up a little short, but I think this year I need to keep my mind a little more open and just go at it. If we got above those, if we got our 26s on, I'd say we'll go. I just wanted to make, I'm not going to say a statement, but I wanted to make sure we had good runs last year. But I feel like we sold ourselves a little short on all the hard work that we put into it. I work a 14 and 14 schedule, which means I'm home for 2 weeks and gone for 2 weeks. So my girlfriend takes care of everything at home, and we get handlers on a work exchange program, and they kept the dogs running. My girlfriend and her family, they've grown up around dogs. My girlfriend's mother grew up racing, and I lucked out. My girlfriend takes good care of the dogs, and when it comes to training, she never misses a beat, and she's actually a nurse herself, so she works shift work, and we're pretty busy household, I guess I could say.
Yeah, so basically what I understand is you have a combo of you and Danielle, I believe your girlfriend's name, correct?
Yeah, you betcha.
You guys do train and race them together as a couple?
Yeah, so last year we had, I believe it was 2 dog teams we were training that were going to go to the paw, and then we had a third 14 dog team that consisted of all yearlings. And we didn't want to injure a lot of the main dogs or anything happen, any freak accidents. So we kind of held them back from a lot of the other races. Like when I'm at work, Danielle loads up and she'll go to races. And
Robert, I lost
what's
him.
funny is hello?
Yeah, I can hear you both.
Hello? Okay, so yeah, what's funny is she took our yearlings to a lot of these 10 and 12 mile races, and Danielle did really well with her yearlings, a lot of top 3 finishes. And I even said that, I didn't want to put too much pressure on our yearlings, but the last race of the year, we found ourselves in Fort Nelson, and I had 3 yearlings on my open team. I didn't do the greatest because we had a lot of troubles with the streets going out, and it was warm conditions, but hopefully, have a better finish next year in Fort Nelson. But I guess Danielle, she brought some dogs too, and when I moved to McDowell here, I think I brought about 50 dogs. So, and I mean, I brought quite the array of bloodlines. I've got everything from Annie Mallow and Marco Reve to the Cooks to Terry and Buddy Streeper. I've got some Eric LaForce stuff, and then some other names that have done well in Canada in the past. The late Jimmy Custer, Jimmy used to train quite the dog team, and he was the type of guy that would always get a jockey and always have a team and, top 2, top 3. And after Jimmy's passing, it was an honor to get some of Jimmy's bloodlines and work that into our kennel. And, and I've got some other stuff, some houndier stuff, but I'm a little skeptical in breeding the really houndy stuff just because I've seen what, I don't go for the husky stuff, but, I've had more, I guess you can say, success with the feet of my dogs with longer runs on dogs that got a little more hair on them, right? Which in the other mindset, I guess, could worry me a little going to Alaska because you guys are always dealing with the heat up there, I find.
So, Mo, let me ask you, you mentioned one of your goals is coming to Alaska and racing Rendezvous and Onak. As you mentioned, our temperatures are usually warmer. It's very, very unusual for us to race in the 20 below or 15 below for any of the races. Actually, we have tough temperatures for a majority of our races. They're kind of wimpy here in Alaska. Do you think the temperature is going to affect your training and your racing if you come up north to race some of these races here?
I think it could, but at the same time, I mean, you see guys like Rob Peebles head up there, and Rob can always do pretty well. Buddy can always do pretty well. I think it's what you put on your dogs before you go run them. Like back in 2013, Fort Nelson, I believe I finished 4th or 5th, and I was worried because it was going to be really warm, and all I did was my last training run before I went, I made sure I ran at the hottest time of the day, and make sure the dogs see that heat. And, you don't go out and overwork them in the heat, it's the same as a human. I mean, I wouldn't expect anybody to be expecting a lot out of me in the heat, but, like I say, you get them out for that exercise in the heat and let them know what you're up against. And I guess Rob Peebles has been quite a bit of a mentor to me in the last few years. And, Rob always said you got to show them what they're going to be up against, and when Rob breaks down his last runs to me, he usually explains he's just showing them and telling them what they're going out to do. I've known Rob since I was a kid, and I've always had a lot of respect for Rob as a dog man because he's always done pretty well. So just in the last few recent years, I've kept pretty close contact with Rob and always mentioning how my dogs are doing, what should I do here, what should I do there. And it's funny because Rob will always tell me he'll figure it out. And I mean, the one race, the race I put on outside Fort McMurray, Alberta, it's the Oil Sands Sled Dog Classic. And it was the week before. I had no leaders. I called Rob. I said, Rob, I need a leader. Sell me a leader. He said, well, I got none. And he said, you'll figure it out. So,
Mo, you mentioned training and getting the dogs ready for the longer distances for the races in Canada, Le Pas in particular. Do you change your diet? Do you feed differently as you're getting closer to these big races, or you maintain the same diet throughout the year?
Well, I can't say I'm any kind of expert at racing Le Pas. You know, it's only something I dabbled into once and something that we're going at again this year. But if I've learned anything about feeding your dogs, it's just feed them right all year round. And I mean, it all depends on the temperatures too. I know if it's colder and, you know, if the dogs are at home, we're going to have more fat. But we try to keep our diet pretty close to the same year round. Like our dogs right now, throughout the summer, they're on red paw, chicken, beef, a little bit of beef fat, and some oil we're adding. But otherwise, I think if you keep it pretty consistent, you know, and in years past, James Wheeler was down in Canada on the circuit, and James knows quite a bit, and I was talking to him about my off-season feeding, and that's the first time anybody ever broke it down to me, and they basically said, you know, you got to keep your feed good year-round, because come fall time, they're working off what you've been feeding them all summer. So I like to, the last couple of years, I've kept our feeding quite consistent on what they're getting year-round.
That's excellent. Also, our listeners, they need to know about something very, very special you're doing to assist different communities and different clubs and different organizations with a fundraiser program. Tell me a little bit about North American Musher Giveaway.
So the idea sprouted from these groups that I had seen on Facebook here in Canada. I mean, I had a buddy win two classic trucks off of them within months, and they were moving everything from skidoos, quads, dirt bikes, anything you could, or boats, anything that was nice. And basically what it is it's a crowdfunded raffle group. So basically what we do is we find the item, we source the item, and we break it down to how much it's going to cost, and then we add a little bit of a markup, and it's it's in numbers. It's a number system. So what a person would do is they pick the number they want, and then once it fills up, that's when we release our payment info, and then people make the payment. Once all payments have been received, we put we go on an online number generator, and then we take a set of dice and we roll the dice, and the number that comes up on the dice is how many times we generate a number, and that's who wins that prize. So we've had, I'd say, I think 4 downloads, maybe 5 downloads we've done by now. We're on our second set of Spectra gang lines. Right now we're currently doing the Extreme Makeover Dog Yard Edition, which is going to be, it's a voucher to your local hardware store. And we do this all on a volunteer basis. I had the idea of doing it for mushers, but I kind of mentioned the idea to a few people, and you know, they said, mushers, they're cheap. Nobody's going to want to be a part of this. And you know, I hummed and hawed about it, and I kind of mentioned it to JR, and JR Saucier of Togo Traction, and JR said, "Well, let's try it out." You know, so me and him went for it, and I think we started out with a booty bundle, a set of gang lines. I put my Daimler up at the time. I'd only used it, I think, 3-4 times, and I kind of went for it just to see how it would work, and we sparked a lot of interest. I think within a couple of weeks we had 600 members. You know, and all the profits that are made from this, we've donated to races. We've donated to clubs. Right now, the 2 we're currently doing, they're going to go towards, there's a young boy, he's got cancer, and his family's going to be up against quite a bit for the next few years, so we're going to be helping them out. And Tommy Bird's race is the next one we're fundraising for. So yeah, we're just kind of try to give back to the sport, you know. We're a big group, and I don't think nothing's ever really brought all the mushers together. So this is what it's what I like to see, what we're doing, and it gets everybody involved. It gets people still communicating. And, you know, at first when we started the group, we were really rolling, and we were doing, like, I think pallet of Red Paw. We filled that up, I think, in a day and a half, and that was 160 people, I believe, maybe 180. And we were just rolling, and we had these deadlines where when we'd freeze the post after it filled up, we had a 24-hour window where people had to pay, and people would pay. And then if people didn't pay, we sent them notices to pay. And, and Terry Streeper told me, he said, Mo, you got to slow down. You're going to burn yourself out. And I was kind of having fun with it, right? Because it was the off season for dogs, and I was just still interacting with all these mushers. So it came to a point where I was at working night shifts, and then I'd come home from work and I'd spend time doing that, and I was staying up, and then it just kind of slowed down. And now I think we're at a good, easy pace where, we're not rushing anybody and nobody's rushing us, and everybody's still involved. I'm just happy with what we're doing for the sport. And, our sport, we get a lot of negative media, I noticed lately, and I'm just glad to be a part of something good of what we're doing for our sport and for others.
Negative media, as you mentioned that, Mo, you mentioned negative media. Lately, we are having animal rights activists talking about tethering dogs or not tethering dogs. And I know that right now you are going with a tetherless concept in your yard. Tell me a little bit what you are planning to do and what you are doing.
Yeah, so I grew up around the tether system, and I've never had anything against it. And so a lot of mushers have tried to sell the idea to me in the past, and it never worked for me. That's what I grew up knowing, and there's I believe the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation made a documentary on my grandfather back in the 70s, and I mean, he had dogs tied back then. And it's never, like my dogs, they can live off chain. Like when we travel, I think out of 32 dogs, we usually only tie maybe 4 or 5 to the truck and everybody free drops. But going to Quebec, I went and toured a few kennels, and, I really liked what Eric LaForce had going there and what J.R. Saucier had going. And it's basically just runs. Your dogs are off the ground, and as long as you got a nice big exercise pen, let everybody out once or twice a day. And it's the efficiency that I was really sold on. After seeing Eric work in his kennel for about a half an hour, he fed, he watered, he let all his dogs out for exercise, and he never bent over once. And I with my back problems that I've had in the past, I was really sold on the fact that I wouldn't have to bend over anymore. And not only that, it makes it a lot easier for Danielle when I'm away at work, and as well as our handlers. It's less space, when your dogs aren't on a chain. And I always had worries that dogs would develop muscles differently, but the way I look at it, they're doing something right over in Quebec. I mean, they can come out west, or they can go to Alaska or whatever, and the Quebec folks are doing really well. So I like what they had going on over there, and I think I don't even know what to say about it, because I'm just going to start the building here this week, and I'm humming and hawing, and I'm still going to keep my tether yard for a year just to make sure, because I know I'll have some dogs. I will maintain an overflow yard of about 12 tether spots just for my retirees or dogs that just do not want to fall into the system or cooperate with it. But, if we can get a majority of our dogs agreeing with it and working with the program, I think it's going to benefit us quite a bit. And I mean, they're out of the rain, they're out of the mud, they're out of the snow, they're out of the dust. They're going to have a covered roof over them, And in Quebec, that's what everybody's about. They're about their dog barns, and and the thing about Quebec is each kennel has to get approved by the SPCA. So I ran into trouble in the past with the SPCA. They'd come to our kennel and they'd say, "Oh, your dogs are skinny." Well, no, our dogs are athletes, and "Oh, your dogs are on a chain." Well, yeah, that's basically how our dogs are kept. And so for me, it's a big relief to explore this new avenue and see what it's going to do for our dogs, how they'll benefit, And talking to Eric, he said the recovery from runs, dogs have a much faster recovery because they're out of the weather, they're out of the elements, and they're not running around on a chain on their days off. They're in there walking around, just being dogs, not out in the elements doing their thing. And on top of that, I mean, it reduces your cost for your chains, your snaps, your hardware, your collars. Your dogs aren't able to destroy their houses if you set it up properly, and because we all know how bored the dogs can get in the spring and the summer, right? So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the concept you are talking about, Mo, is a dog barn and dog runs attached to each house, or they're all in the dog barn, and when you are ready, you just leave all the doors open and they can play in the park.
So the concept I'm going with, it's not going to quite be a dog barn. It'll be a covered roof. It'll be, what I'm going to have is 12 runs on each side with an aisle down the center. Every dog kennels will be between knee and waist height level. And then that kennel will be connected to a large exercise area in which, when it's, time for the dogs to get out and play, all I got to do is swing all the gates open and everybody can run out. And then on top of that, I've got an even bigger area outside of that. But at this time, that's all barbed wire. So in future years, I'll be getting rid of the barbed wire and putting in some 2x4 squared fencing that's a wire. So the dogs will have another big area. What I like, the idea, if the dogs break out of the kennel, they're just going into a big exercise pen. You don't have them out causing havoc in the yard. So, yeah, we're going to, the houses are connected off the backside. Dogs are off ground. It'll be, and the thing I like is there's going to be no more buckets. All my feed will be basically in tubs on tool carts at waist height. All my dogs' bowls, their feed bowls, will be hung outside their kennel after they're done eating. So it's a matter of rolling up to every kennel, grabbing your bowls that are going to be at about chest height, turn around, put your feet into your bowls, open the kennel, and 2 dogs per kennel, barely bend over, put your food in, and go on to the next one. Because my yard now is quite the area. We've got, each dog is on a 7-foot chain, and we've got 6 rows that are 10 dogs deep. So we cover quite the big area. Right now, our dogs are 3 miles away from our house at Danielle's parents' place. So we're back and forth over there because I had moved here before we had bought our place. So we just kind of settled quick over there and got the dogs settled. And, I was planning since last year on how we were going to build a dog yard. And there was an area where I wanted to clear an area into a wooded spot with a road, and we'd open it wide open and then build the kennel with a tether system. And then me and Danielle had gone on a vacation to Quebec this summer and seen how they do it over there. And it's, it was a no-brainer for me. I liked what they got going on over there.
So you're going to be setting up this new layout in your own property this year and maintain the dog yard in a separate, the dog yard with tethers in a separate location then?
Yeah, so the tether system will stay at Danielle's parents' place. I'll level it and grade it and make sure, because we're in straight sand over here. So the dogs, every 2 weeks we run the discs behind the tractor through there and level it off with a leveling drag, because we all know how dogs like to dig. So we'll get that nice and leveled and leave that, for the winter to sit. I'll have, like I said, probably a 12-dog tether spot at our property here, and then so we'll have 3 pens for puppies, 12 tether spots, and then 24 kennels that'll hold 48 dogs.
Perfect. Mo, you mentioned that racing different locations and following a circuit. How do you manage traveling with your job and with the dogs? And do you take off and do the circuit weeks at a time, or you come back home after every race?
Well, it's funny. Back in 2013, I had been with the same company for about 7 years. I trained a lot of guys. I'd always worked overtime for them, always helped them out. And I asked for one night shift off to go race the 6-dog in the pod, and they wouldn't give it to me. And I ended up just quitting my job, and I went on the road for 93 days. I stayed mostly in the Northwest Territories and raced that circuit up there. But now that I got to live the adult life, I focus. I have a pretty good schedule, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So it's a matter of picking and choosing which races I'm willing to miss. But at the same time, when I'm away working, Danielle can still sneak away and go race, because I work 1,000 kilometers away from home. So when I'm gone, I'm gone. But yeah, it's a matter of picking and choosing. But the thing is, I think if we go to Alaska this year, I'll be taking 2 weeks off work, which will give me 6 weeks off. So it's nice that I can get away for 6 weeks straight with the dogs.
So we'd love to have you in Alaska, Mo. I heard that your dogs are very fast, very steady, and we would always love to have you in Alaska. In in our circuit here, as a lot of people know, we usually see the same folks again and again, and it's always so fun to have someone new coming from Europe, from Canada, from lower 48, or anywhere else around the world. It brings new energy in our sport, and it would be a phenomenal achievement for your team to come and race the circuit or just hit a couple of main races here.
What I love is in the sport of dog mushing, we all speak the same language. I'm people from other countries obviously speak a different language, but when it comes down to talking dogs, we can all talk dogs together. And I look forward to going up there because I always run a pretty open mind, and I like to hear other people's theories. I mean, there's so many theories when it comes to animal care and raising dogs. I mean, there's still things that my dad tells me that my grandfather did when he raised his pups, and I still follow those guidelines. I love hearing other people's ideas.
That's good. Robert, I know that you always like to ask one specific question from our guests. Tell me what you have in mind, Robert.
Yes, Mo, thank you very much for joining us today. And I love to ask the same question to all of our guests. We cover, in our shows, we cover both distance and sprint, and it's always great to hear both sides of the coin, if you will. My question is, if somebody came up to you and asked for some advice, they were just getting started, maybe in sprint mushing, maybe in dryland sports like bike jor or ski jor or anything like that, what piece of advice would you give that new person?
That's a good one, because there's so much depth in that question. If I could give any advice to anybody, it would be that you're going to want to get yourself an experienced lead dog, 5 or 6 years old, and you don't want to go out and spend a pile of money on a bunch of good dogs because you're not at the level where you can keep those dogs continuing on what they're destined to do. I think when it comes to running dogs, you got to have dogs on your same level, and you got to learn together. Another thing is that nobody's ever going to sell you their best dog, and if they're going to sell you their best dog, you're going to spend a lot of money. As my dad always said, that my grandfather said, the best dogs you can run for yourself are the ones that you raise yourself. So, and it's true, because there'll always be, well, I'm not going to say always, but, most dogs that you buy, they're just going to be something you're going to say, okay, that's why the person didn't want to keep it, and then you learn to work with that dog. I find the best dogs are the ones you raise yourself. And when it comes to equipment and stuff like that, I mean, not everybody can afford to go out and buy the best, but you're going to save yourself a lot of time. You're going to save a lot of headaches. Just buy the proper equipment, provide good animal care for your dogs, and have an open mind. When people ask questions, don't be shy to tell them what you're doing. Some people fear the animal rights people, and I kind of get a kick out of it because I don't know how I could word it. I'll kind of play along with them and let them think they're degrading me, I guess, but at the same time, I like to let them know that we take care of our animals, and we put a lot of care into them. We spend money on our dogs. I mean, our dogs are our kids, so that's the main thing I guess I could say is feed them right, buy the proper equipment, and have an open mind. And the thing is like I said, it's all the same language we're speaking here. Don't be shy to ask people questions, and don't. You can't really get your feelings hurt in the sport because it's such a small community that we live in that there's no point in being disgruntled on something somebody said to you, because later on down the road you're going to see that person, and you're going to have to communicate with them on better terms, I'm sure, at some point in time. So
That's excellent advice for sure. Guys, we're just about out of time. We're a little bit over, as a matter of fact. KP, thank you very much for joining us today, as always. And Mo, thank you very much for joining us. And if you will, Mo, hang on just a second as we close so we can talk a little bit off air. But on behalf of my co-host today, KP, and our guest today, Moe Ladouceur, calling in from Canada, this is Robert Forto for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Did you know that Alaska Dog Works trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michelle Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska Dog Works on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.